Hello, good day, everyone. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. We are so excited to have Jenna with us, Hamza and I, my frequent co-host. And we're Future of Work 24 Hours Live. What are we gonna dive in today, Hamza? What do you think?
Well, I'm curious. There's so much going on, and not only is there so much going on in the world when we think about unimagined possibilities and future of work, and so many tangents we could go on, but also this is officially the week of our 2022 global unconference happening on Thursday and Friday. So I'm excited to have Jenna really bring these live series home with us pre-event, and explore, what are these unimagined possibilities into the future of work as we're heading into these open space conversations. So yeah, I'm curious.
Awesome. Well, hi everyone, wherever you're tuning in from. Nice to meet everybody. And yeah, we're in the home stretch. I'm just also really excited. I'm new to this Future of Work 24 Hours Open Spaces. I've organized several conferences in the past and/or have attended them. I love them, as well as workshops and courses and professional development and creativity. So this is an experiment for myself, and I think we're all about improv and creativity and testing and learning. So I'm just excited also to explore today with Hamza and April. I'm also impressed by your backgrounds in Scrum and Agile, wide range. So yeah, I'm curious for you both. What was the inspiration behind putting this together? And since I'm new, I'm also just curious about the highlights from your both of your experiences.
For me, for the live conversations, it was more of creating space to continue those awesome conversations in the open space. And Hamza said, I think we should do this. And I'm a yes and kind of girl. As you just mentioned, Jenna, improv. So, okay, yes, and let's do this together. So, Hamza, you want to share like more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to yes and what April just said, we've been through now, two iterations of the 24-hour global conference, and each time we're left wanting more. We're like, this can't stop at 24 hours. We really need a space for continued co-discovery and dialogue throughout the year. How do we do that in a way that can imitate sort of the flavors of open space, in that it's emergent, it's raw, there's no predefined agenda. So April and I, started talking, and I think mid Zoom call, we're like, okay, why don't we just go live on just all of our platform, and let's just be raw and have these conversations and engage our community in it. And also an interesting aspect of this was also that it's not necessarily that April and I would necessarily be the co-hosts each time, but rather, again, in the spirit of being a self-organized community, and you know essentially having rotating roles even within the guardrails of live. We said it, and let's introduce new faces throughout these series, and also go about sharing with the outside world in terms of just how we operate as well. And let's set up a platform where people can play and people can go live and people can have these conversations, and that's our role. And we'll kick it off, but the community can drive us from there on. So that was sort of the essence of Future of Work Live. Very much in line with the essence of the Future of Work 24 Hours um, as a whole itself, on conference, and really everything we do.
Yeah, it's kind of hilarious how many times they were like, "Oh my goodness, we'll have these amazing conversations just in planning. Like, we should have recorded that. We should have recorded that." That's why we're supposed to be going live, is to do that so other people can have a window in these new ways of working because we're living it out. Um, so Jenna, how have you been as a serial organizer myself? How have you been doing it? You want to share a little bit about some of the things you're doing and how you're playing with new ways of working?
Sure, sure. Well, just some background. And I think what's really cool is I have learned more about you, Hamza, and April. Like, I think we all share in common um, just the passions about organizational psychology. Hamza, I saw you were a resident advisor. I was a resident advisor back in the day, like for 2 years. But just this common ground about passion for people, dynamics, how we all interact and work together. What are those relationships like? What are different hierarchical structures and the implications behind that? As well as we really value professional development, learning, training, education, consulting, and so forth. For me, I started out in higher education and I worked at UC Irvine. And during undergrad, I was an orientation staff tour leader. I did everything that there was to do on campus. I loved life on campus, and in the U.S., as you know, it's a whole other story. Um, Going to college out here, and I joined every organization that there was. So I thought initially that was my path. I later worked at a small private college where I was helping students from low income backgrounds, disadvantaged backgrounds, help them find jobs and help them to really build their skills and to connect them with the community. I also studied in Spain, which was a life changing experience after living with my host family. So my dream was to speak Spanish and at the business level. So I later moved to Argentina, 2013, lived out there for 3 years and worked in travel hospitality. Started like a business networking group out there for free and for fun, and organizing events at these cultural centers with artists and musicians. Loved life in Latin America. I could talk about that for days. Moved back to LA where I'm based, and I've actually been working remotely the last 6 years. Uh, so we could talk for hours. I know just about remote culture, and I'm an extreme extrovert, so I feel like I've been dying inside the last 6 years, frankly. But that's why I go to conferences, and that's why I go to networking events and trying to bring people together, just that energy, bouncy ideas off each other. And working for the ed tech startup Trilogy, we scaled from 20 to 1,000 employees in 3 years. And we were helping students bridge the digital gap of putting on online boot camps. Well, actually, on ground, hybrid, asynchronous, and virtual. And students were studying software development, UI, UX, data, and we were putting on demo days and connecting startups with our students. Well, we exited in 3 years. Amazing remote culture. And then from there, the last 2 years, because of COVID, I've started my own consulting, working with students in startups, nonprofits, accelerators, helping essentially with community experiences, community educational programs, partnerships, workforce, community events. So that's my story in a nutshell. But to answer your question about like how are we working nowadays, for me, I think co-working spaces. I go to coffee shops. I work from home. I do a variety of that, as well as having these virtual co-working accountability groups are also really helpful. These virtual cafes where we'll meet as groups to do little sprints together, and also hold each other accountable. I think being a part of these groups are helpful. And even within an organization, it depends. This is a long topic, right? About culture and like values, purpose, mission, and just the small interactions of how you treat each other and how do you get to know each other. How do you create a sense of belonging and safety and authenticity where people can be themselves and make mistakes and test and experiment together, and that feedback loop. So anyway, that's my long spiel
Yeah.
about that.
So
What about you
what
all?
so what I get from that, I'm like, oh, there's so many like little nuggets to explore, right? How was I was like, okay, so I'm thinking like, okay, what are some unimagined possibilities around that for you as a someone also, many people were working, you know, remotely before, and different things. It's not my first time working remotely because of the pandemic. But, this long stretch of doing things have, for people who are extroverted or more like me, like an ambivert, also a conference junkie, so I get it, Jenna. Um, what's unimagined for you? Like, as you say, you're an extreme extrovert. What's that unimagined possibility? What could it look like? Since
Yeah. Um,
something.
and the thing that I think for me, and I'm processing out loud. Like I feel like when I say extrovert, it's kind of like improv as well. So on the side, by the way, like I'm really passionate about the arts. Like, so for all you, singing, writing, dancing, playing instruments, jamming, improv. I think for me, I get inspiration from others. Um, so I think it's just bouncing ideas off each other. I'm also involved with Miro X global community, and I've learned a lot from that group as well. But unimagined possibilities, I think if we were to put it visually on like a mind map, for example, I think it's looking at different tools together. So like different tools and technologies. I think it's looking at problem topics. Like if we all were to choose passion topics, and just diving into that and looking at systems and looking at structures and layers. Um, and for me, I really learn best by like listening and bouncy ideas off of each other. So it's such a wide topic. When we say unimagined, I think it's really pushing what exists, and then it's thinking about what doesn't exist, right? That's what unimagined means. So for me, I think we could still explore more the space of what happens in between when people have calls, right? Like, so for some of you who are freelancers or project-based consultants like myself, and I'm working with 5 to 8 clients or plus, and we have an existing structure of working with them. What could we do working with others in a similar field, in an adjacent field, and then fields that are completely different from us? Just like we're working with people within our circle region where we are, but in other countries. And I mean, I don't have an answer for that, right? But all I could do is ask questions and explore topics and reveal it. And I think it's asking questions together and learning from best practices and industry practices from each other. So I think it's the power of crowdsourcing. I think it's the power of the network of thinking bigger and leveraging systems. So it's not like reinventing the wheel. It's not doing double work. It's looking like at a bird's eye. And that's what I'm curious about. I really would like, because I feel like a lot of the times we're siloed and we're not communicating, and we don't know that these 5 companies are doing outreach, and they're all doing it an old school manual way, and perhaps there are others out there who are using systems and tools that we don't know about that can help each other. So that's just what I'm interested in. And unimagined is what how can we use that power of systems around the world? How can we do cross sector work? So like looking at or listening to PhDs, academics, bridging that with practitioners, cross sector, meaning like let's look at a problem together and let's bring higher ed educators, let's bring nonprofit, let's bring government, let's talk to startup innovators and people who want to disrupt. And I think it's, if we could use visual tools, we could use systems, we can use all our strengths and different approaches, like that's just what I want to explore. There's a lot there. So yeah.
Yeah.
Big question.
Hamza,
Big question.
Hamza, what do you like think about that? Like the whole idea of um companies like even sharing knowledge with one another freely and
Yeah. Yeah, I think
yeah.
that's, I think often if we look a little closer, we find that disciplines have more to gain from similarities versus differences. And one topic that comes to mind, which is very core to my heart, is um, again, the way we deal with systems that are, concerning the environment and moving to more a circular economy. And as you were talking, Jenna, so I think there's two aspects of this which came to mind. One is, we started talking about how do we make like even tiny shifts in the way we meet with each other, relate with each other, and then start to shape the culture, right? So part of that started to remind me of the individual reasons why and how work is structured, and around how work gets structured, which is around, okay, we have to meet or organize things in a specific way with the end goal of being the most efficient and productive and effective that we can be as individuals and as teams. And one unimagined possibility, which might be a bit blue sky, but that's what this space is for, right? To come up with what are those unfathomable ideas. But one of those thoughts is, does it always have to be about productivity? I mean, as individuals, we are more than our productivity, right? And more than what we can churn out. We're not machines. We're not cogs in a wheel. That's what robots are for. So it's almost turning on its head this idea of like always needing to be productive at an individual and at a team level. Could work be a place where people don't just go to be productive, but also could work be a place where people go to just form connections, form community, find joy, and then so on, and then truly bring your whole self to work in that sense. And I think this also ties a bit into the more zoomed out organizational level in terms of systems, as we started talking about. So, again, why do organizations exist? Is it to just make money and profits and growth at all costs? Or is it to also, impact people positively, impact the planet positively? In which case, there's so many cross collaborations and diverse disciplines that need to be sort of working in tandem with each other to make that happen from an external market perspective, and also just internally how we work as a company, how we treat our people, what's our philosophy around compensation, around learning, around development, around performance, and then so on. So I think, and also of course the planet. Are we, just being extractive of our environment, or how are we, incorporating conscious business practices? So I think, with those two aspects, it's really about, again, I just really just, maybe just moving away from this notion of being productive, both as individuals and as organizations. Maybe it's not so much about productivity anymore, right?
Um, to me, I'm over here like my body's like screaming different things, and maybe because I'm a nerd at heart. As I think about, Star Trek came to mind. If anybody knows Star Trek and just the world and how people live, and why they do different things is not about financial gain. It was a greater purpose. It was an evolutionary purpose, and I think that's what we're talking about as a society. Like our purpose is different on why we do different things, um, and and I see that. Like what's next, unless we have all these different organizations who are doing different things, and one day maybe that goes away. We're just adding value. It's not about, I think in a previous conversation, it's not about, hey, I've found that this uh, and needing that credit, or power or different things. Like we're just working differently as a humankind to, you know, move forward and progress and truly see something, be to live out a greater purpose. And I feel like, oh, us talking about it, that's what's unimaginable. And it's like, how do we get there? And it feels like hopeful, like, ooh, you know what? Maybe we can. Maybe we can get there by starting to have dialogue around that. So I don't know. I pinch myself uh, kind of thinking about all those different things. I've had multiple things pop up in my mind, like through conversing with you, um, Jenna and Hamza. I'm like, oh wow, like what can we do? There's so much more. I love like unimagining, thinking about, okay, what did you feel like that's not possible in the future by us speaking it out and then trying to solve like how could this happen, right? That's how it begins. I love
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like what you're sharing, April, I think it's getting it out on paper, and that's why I think like tools like Miro or Mural, speaking it out, like most ideas, like I've been reading a lot of these different books, where good ideas come from, Medici effect. They're all about innovation. It's super interesting, and also these books about creativity and inventions, and how did people create Velcro, and how did they create the microwave. They usually had a different intention or goal that was completely different. Like the light bulb, it wasn't to turn it on. They were trying to turn off things, and then later they flipped it around, and they realized like, oh, we have to turn it on to ignite like light, for example. Same with Velcro. It was a mistake, and I don't remember the full stories, okay, but it's like something were attached to a dog, and they realized like, oh, these two things can attach in this way. What is the point? The point is, sometimes it's okay not to know, but when we're in that process, we pivot. And I just think it's more of the data and the feedback that you're gathering. Unimagined, I think it's really anything's possible. It sounds so cheesy, but it might take 10 years or 15 years. It might take 5 years. It might take work collaborating, and it's complex. But I think it's just taking those steps, and formulating these ideas, and starting to, again, evolve and bounce ideas off each other. And back to what you're saying about productivity, Hamza, it's interesting that the world is becoming more like, holding the importance of a triple bottom line. I think, when we think about OKRs and we think about KPIs, like I think it's just having a multifaceted categories where it's just a given. Like B Corporation, for example, they are creating standardizations now where it's a given that we need to have some social impact. And what within social impact, it could be sustainability, the UN SDG goals, but that's just should technically be built in as human beings for society in our organization. So that's just one layer, and then the other, it could be layers. I don't think it has to be an all or nothing. It could be, yes, we want to be productive and efficient. However, we want to care about people, and we want to help people build skills and continue to grow and progress. We want to advance the field. So each organization has their own objective, but I think we could have multifaceted objectives like built in. So anyway, was just curious your thoughts about that, and also what are your thoughts for unimagined possibilities?
Hamza, you want to take us away, like to
Yeah, I
to
think,
end it, to bring us home, because we got a
yes,
minute left. I
yes,
know.
unfortunately, we are coming up on time. I think, that's the thing with these conversations. We get into it, and April and I. One of the other things about AI was that we said, hey, let's cap it off at 24 hours. If it's 24 hours, well, we'll cap it off at 24 minutes. And then more and more we're finding that it's just too short, because these conversations are so enriching and just so stimulating to have. But to answer your question, Jen, I think what I take away from what you're saying, it really does start with the first step being not execution, but rather jumping into action, but maybe just imagining and holding space for imagination, and then taking maybe those moonshots that we could into the future, right? And I think, and that starts with divergent thinking and divergence, and people engaging with people who are from very different backgrounds from ours, to really create that amalgamation of ideas that could have never existed had we just stayed in our lane. So that's my big takeaway in terms of what's the first step to taking this somewhere. I think it's that divergence and that innovation and making space for creating healthy tensions in
Yeah.
teams and societies and communities.
Wow. Um, I know we're at time. I just want to say that continue the conversation with us. I'm excited to continue the conversation with Jenna during Future Work 24 Hours Live, and maybe you want to join in that conversation. Join with us. We are excited to have you. Um, you can go to our website or a bit.ly link to grab a ticket. Is pay what you can to join us for one of these conversations. And thank you for wherever you're listening. We invite you to like, comment, share, subscribe, depending on the platform that you're on. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you this week.
I
Bye.